welcome back to episode 8 of What's Spinnin' here at 45Drives. On our side, you've joined with myself, Brett, Mitch, familiar faces, but we're also joined by our president and co-founder, Doug Milburn, who is incredibly excited to talk to our guest today that he said, guys, I'm coming in. And we went, are you sure? And he said, I'm coming. So the three of us are here, and we are talking to Jacob and Zach Smith and their friend Matt as well.
Okay.
Well, my name's Zach Smith. I'm the slightly older brother to that guy, Jacob. Been around in the internet infrastructure space for a little longer than I'd like to admit. So about 20 years, been playing with things that go inside of data centers. My wife likes to ask me, what do I do at work? And I say, I just make computers turn on and off all day long.
I say the same thing.
I got into that on accident, like most people. Probably all have some story about how, it turns out I didn't go to some prestigious university to get a degree in cloud computing. I went to music school and then had to find work, so did some IT stuff, paid my way through college, and ended up in 2001 at an early Linux-based open source cloud company, just trying to push bits on the internet. So, Jacob, should I pass the mic to you?
Yeah, sounds good. So Zach and I met obviously a long time ago, 44 years ago, because we were born about an hour and a half apart. So we've had a lot of time to learn each other's quirks and get annoyed with each other, but we're pretty good now. Good enough that we started a business together in 2014 called Packet. Packet was about democratizing sort of like physical data center stuff and making it more software enabled. I don't do either of those things, like software or data centers. Learned a lot of them along the way, but mainly built a career in music as well. And then in internet marketing, go to market. I love to talk about channels and partners and all kinds of things. So that was my job at Packet. And since then, I've learned a lot about data centers and just set up my Ubiquity home network right there. You see it right there? That's part of, it's dangling Chad. I had a lot of fun doing that, so I'm taking it until I make it.
Awesome.
Matt, it's all
Love
you.
the Ubiquity gear. Very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I'm Matt Anderson. I've done both the software and the infrastructure side, so I would say I'm the guy that's behind the keyboard more often than not. I've worked at several places, met these two working at Equinix when I was building and running their bare metal platform provisioning stack, and so have a lot of experience actually making the software that turns the machines on and off all day.
Nice.
And that's why I was like very keen to even see whether or not there was a dedicated NIC on the BMC for the server that you guys sent, because if there wasn't, then I might not be able to use it. But prior to Equinix, was also working kind of in a similar space, but for Twilio SendGrid, and so I was also working on building a bunch of their bare metal like automation platform because. Running the largest email cannon on the planet requires you to not necessarily run in the public cloud all the time, right?
Awesome.
So, if I may, just because you piqued my interest here, music. I'm a musician, not a very good one. It's sort of in our local Celtic folk tradition we have around here. What do you guys do? You guys were more serious, obviously, than I was. Just what's your musical story in a minute?
Well, there's a bass sitting over in the corner somewhere there. So I play bass. I grew up in Southern California, learned to play bass at school and then through private lessons, and just loved it and thought I was going to grow up to be in some symphony orchestra. So came to New York to study at Juilliard. And then I realized that there are not a lot of job openings going on these days, especially for, bass players and, symphony orchestras that can pay you enough money to pay your rent. And so I spent my college years, like I said, just working odd jobs, paying my way through school. And when I graduated, I went looking for more work. I get to play in an orchestra these days. What the best way to be a musician is to have some other job and be able to do music whenever you want. So that's been really a joy for me, is since the pandemic, lowered my travel schedule. I used to be on the road about 3 weeks a month. Has really allowed me to pick that back up and really enjoy playing in the New Conductors Symphony and the United Nations Symphony here in New York.
Wow.
Cool. And how about you, Jacob? You play?
Yeah, so I played the bassoon because no one else played it. Literally, there's like no one who was, so it was instant first chair, which I thought was a great idea until I was like, oh, there's like 9 keys for my left thumb. I guess that's why people don't play to this. But I took it pretty far. Yeah, I ended up playing, in the opera for a long time in Philadelphia, had a career in music, but again, it was really flexible and I was always entrepreneurial. And so it allowed me to do a lot of things. The tie-in, ultimately, I mean, music's interesting, but like sports or serving in the military, doing lots of other things where you go to a high level, especially with that combination of directed work and creativity with teamwork, ended up being a real key for us where we were hiring people. We were like, do you know the thing that we're trying to hire you for, or can you learn it? Yep. And always easier if you're excited to find people who know how to show up on time, how to learn new skills, can work with people, can complete stuff, from soup to nuts. And so we hired a lot of artists, musicians, ex-military, XXX as part of our journey, especially in the infrastructure space where it's mainly apprentice-driven anyways, right? Yeah. Changing a little bit now, but
I mean, Matt went to school for Kubernetes, right?
Oh, the Kubernetes.
I went to school for finance, but
That's
Kubernetes is from the school of hard knocks, I think.
Close to
Yeah,
Kubernetes,
right.
isn't it? Oh, sort of like.
Right.
Orchestra, right? Orchestration, close enough.
It's something
right. Orchestration.
that I've noticed a lot of our guests, it's a running theme with pretty much all of our guests so far, is all very successful people, and nearly all of them were self-taught, like didn't go to university specifically to be classically trained. So it's really, really cool to hear that was also kind of your pathway to coming into this world.
That, and they're all entrepreneurs.
All entrepreneurs as well.
Well, I got a note here that
you guys,
Zach and Jacob, you guys, you started your industrious career together with a lawn mowing business. You started back as you were kids, so it went all the way back, I guess, all the way to the
the
roots,
big innovation there is moving from pay per service to subscription.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like the key to every business model.
That's
So
awesome.
I have a hypothesis that being an entrepreneur is a genetic disease that you're born with it, and there's not much you can do with it other than let it express. So anyway, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's
definitely an
felt
addiction.
like that to me. So yeah.
Yeah, how many businesses are you into at this point?
Well, we have 3 good tech businesses that are all tied together. So
Yeah.
and it's
I have a question. Maybe you should have 45. What's with the 45?
Yeah.
Great question.
That's a good origin story.
I'll answer that.
Not shooting for the moon, are we?
Yeah. So 45Drives started, we were like, we're going to name it exactly what it is. The very first product we built in combination with our partner at the time, Backblaze, had an idea to take back the reins, almost the initial seed of our new enterprise idea that we can talk about later, but take back the reins from the legacy vendors and say, wait, we can build a good, solid storage server without having to jump through the hoops and do all the crazy stuff, go talk to Dell and wine and dine and do all that. So Backblaze, Protocase, our 45Drives parent company, who is a rapid sheet metal manufacturer amongst everything. Prototyping everything. Went and built a 45-bay storage server. The idea from there blew up. Backblaze took their design. We built a service industry and business all around it, and we liked the name so much at the beginning we stuck with it. So the 45.
Despite dire warnings that if you do 45, nobody will understand when you make a 30 drive or 60 drive machine. But
it's a great opening for everyone to make the joke of, what are you going to do now that you have a 60? You're going to call it 60 drives? And it's just like, yeah, sure. But that's where it came from. We called it what it was, and then we grew it from there. And now 45Drives is so much more than a 45Drives bay storage server. We have all kinds of product lines, service industry, solutions, consulting, you name it, we'll say yes to it.
Well, now it makes tons of sense, because now I can see the aura between you and Backblaze, our friends Nilay and Love and everyone there. Great team, and also hackers. Like, lower the cost, figure it out, make it more reliable, measure the thing.
Yep.
Why not invent it? Obviously, there's like hard tech in the world that you can't just hack in that way, but infrastructure is uniquely sort of like accessible for that, at least at the moment. Maybe not forever.
Yeah, and it's been a really interesting journey into it. As we said, we started off making servers of Backblaze's design, and which I would describe as very large and very inexpensive were the 2 attributes of it. Along the way, we got actually a conversation with some engineering people at Netflix, and who talked to us about building servers. And we were not ready to do it at the time, and we never did that. But they shared their view of architecture, which was open. And we have a couple other streaming and telco customers who had also talked about their architecture that we had dealt with on the other side of the business. And so the idea of making very, very fast and very reliable part of the whole thing came into it. And our whole Stornator line and Stornado line, they're all about that. They're about marrying this a really, really high speed architecture and high reliability architecture with Backblaze's innovations in physical architecture, and then coming together to do hardware. On the hardware side of it, the words big, strong, fast we use on that. Whereas it wasn't its roots. It was big was where it started off. Very intentionally, that's what it was, and it didn't need to be fast.
Well, it's like it's like data centers. You usually get there's three things in data centers you usually need, which is great location, great connectivity, and great price point, and you usually get 2 out of 3 of those. Yeah. So I presume it's probably the same thing in designing storage, right? You can get big and you can get reliable, but also fast seems to be sometimes. Maybe that's changed with media.
Adding the third to it is our game.
That's where the direct wired architecture came into play, where we really say no to SAS expanders or multiplexers, and that really gives us a little bit of a leg up, or quite a bit of a leg up on our very dense servers.
So where we get to everything we make. That's wrong. It's not everything we make. Vast majority of what we make. The concept of network limited speed. And and most of what we do is on-prem, or at least if it's the back end of data.
Prem.
It's on someone's prem, and some of it's backing up cloud services and things like that in a data center or whatever else. But they have a network in there, and it's 10 gigabit or it's 100 gigabit. We have some 1 gigabit customers too. Yep. But and you do that, and a whole bunch of our machines, you can saturate your network connections very, very easily. So it's pretty cool. And you talk about speed and storage. It's just a really interesting topic, because assume the speed limitations of the servers, and it's not in the servers anymore on the architecture that we use. Nope. It's not it. It's network. It's connectivity.
Network.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could totally see it. Well, you're going to have to tie this back to me, because my favorite, it's like a love-hate relationship. The most amount of time I've spent in a data center was with a Sun 4500 Thumper. So that was a big drive, big beast back in 2004-05 when ZFS was first coming around as a file system, and you can use dumb drives versus RAID controllers.
Yep.
And expose various types of, whether it's block or file system. And I loved it, man, except for when it broke on me a couple times and you really needed to be a Solaris expert. We were not really there yet. We were more Linux guys at the time. Right. So it's just that, the edge cases become really, really, really critical. And so there's just a high amount of specialty in the end when you get these complex, big systems, even with the right architecture. So curious, are you guys invested into open source? Is 45Drives Linux based? Is it FreeBSD based? What are you guys doing to make all this go?
We are, you get into what we call New Enterprise. Our implementation New Enterprise, modular, open source, open platform, trying to make it non-critical, ultra large, and fast, but to do it in a way that is very, very robust. So it comes along. Linux is a key part of what we do. Linux is where we go. ZFS. Yep. In our standalone servers,
on Linux.
But clustering is most of what we do right now. So clustering and Ceph is where we've gone. We've been elsewhere, and elsewhere hasn't worked out well. And then we found Ceph, and we've become experts in Ceph. We do a lot of consulting in Ceph. So Ceph, Linux, Ceph, and ZFS are where we live.
And to step that up one further to answer is we in the early days we were a little BSD, as in we'd use a lot of FreeNAS, or TrueNAS now, but it was FreeNAS in the past. Great product, but man, BSD is limiting when you want it to do things it's not going to do. Linux just really breaks that open. So we are big fans of Linux.
As evidence why TrueNAS has gone to Linux as well.
To answer your question, we are very invested in the open source, both by just sharing knowledge, and we are principal sponsors of the Rocky Linux Foundation. We hopped on that train right away when they announced as the phoenix out of the ashes of CentOS.
Out of the ashes.
Yeah. Great group of people there, Greg Kurtzner and everything. They're incredibly helpful people doing great work. And like you said, back in 04 when you were using the Sun and ZFS and everything, and that concept of, I don't have to use a RAID controller anymore.
Yeah.
I'll go on record here. I'll say it. I hate a RAID controller. I hate the
RAID controller with the battery backup unit.
Yeah.
Ew. Don't do that again.
What?
Yeah. But no, we just, where we're at now is software-defined storage is so
Robust
mature and robust,
yeah.
whether it's clustering with Ceph or just ZFS can do just about anything. Like, we'll put a RAID controller in our box if we need to, if the customer really wants to, but we really standard on the idea of let's let the software do the work and just put a good platform there. So anyway,
I'm sure some embedded controller that somebody buys one time and nobody touches for 10 years is totally the place where you should put all your parity checks, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Big old black box.
Yeah. Trust your data to that. Yep. Yeah. It's all good. What could go wrong? Oh.
And then the like you mentioned, the robustness and flexibility of Ceph, having file, block, and object all from a single clustered, scalable, elastic solution. It allows our customers to solve all of their problems and then some. Not all of them use everything, but it's always there for them. If a new problem arises, it's easy for us to just turn that on for them and start using it.
All of their storage problems.
All
of their problems.
Correct. So, and one of the things,
there are a lot of problems out there.
Yes, there is.
One of the things we do at 45Drives that is unique is we are this, open source. Open source. I've loved open source since the time it came around. That whole idea of collective intelligence, people really invested in the outcome of it, cooperating. And I look at it and I go, Linux is being the center of it. I just the power and robustness in it is absolutely incredible. But the view out there in the markets we sell into is hey, we're enterprise, we can't go mess with that. Because what if something goes wrong? Nobody owns it. So we're the people that own it. We are that single source of responsibility. We bring in everything from the Linux to the ZFS to the Ceph and beyond that, along together with hardware, and it's single point of responsibility for open source storage systems, and that in a very, very open manner, we will do what our customer wants. And so many of our enterprise customers, they want full white glove service, absolutely everything 24/7. But we get other people on the other end that go all the way down to hardware or just get us in for consulting and then build their own systems. And we're very happy that open model service-wise, but also hardware-wise. Somebody wants to plug, some of our legacy enterprise storage vendor competitors do us a favor. They won't let their customers use the hard drives that they buy. They have to buy them from them. And the hard drive makers say, how did they flash our hard drives? I don't know how they did that, but somehow they did it. And, it's of no value to the customer. But we're open. That's one example. We're open.
It's the disk tray, man. There's so much innovation in the disk tray.
Absolutely.
You actually touched on something when you were explaining that when you said our support and we do so much more, I think that's something that really makes us unique. So, for example, we will also work on the third-party software on the customer side. So ESXi, for example, we're not an ESXi vendor, but we have a lot of experts that know a lot about vSphere and ESXi. So a customer comes in and has problems with their ESXi server. They think it's storage. Well, we go in there, we troubleshoot. We find maybe it's not. And we say, well, we can take a look at that if you'd like to. And they're like they just look at us like, what, really? I don't have to call my VMware guys, and we've been hearing a lot of horror stories won't get too deep into it, but in the last little while, VMware has had some trials and tribulations, and so we hear a lot of them just kind of saying, no, sorry, we can't help you, and
corporate overlords.
Yeah. So that's another thing that really sets us apart, I think, on our support.
When you guys are ready for us to turn the podcast the other way, but I got a couple questions for you all, which is I struggled in the cloud infrastructure world being everybody needs storage. The two things that people always paid our bare metal compute company to do was run the network and get them storage. I'm like, but we were in the compute business. And no, I want the network to always work. I don't really want to pay for it. I want storage. And I always struggled with storage because it's one of those thankless kind of jobs. It seems to be something that people care desperately about, cost per terabyte or cost per petabyte or whatever. And at the same time, if it ever messes up and you lose people's data, they will never forgive you or your next generation of children
Always
or
the
anything.
storage server. Someone
Right,
comes
and
in
so-
with a ticket and it goes, we've got a whole stack here, but we're calling our storage vendor because it's your fault.
The network gets a lot too.
The
Got to be
kind of
fair.
reward aspect, like how do you get to the value proposition? Sometimes I always struggled with that on storage. It's like, you don't get a lot of kudos when it works, but when it doesn't work, you're really in the line of fire. And at the same time, people are looking for cost some reason, which is like, I mean, get it. But maybe that has to do also with the competitive landscape of public cloud and related. Like, well, I usually put my stuff in S3 and it usually is always there, right? Or like it's highly reliable actually. And I usually use, some, iCloud and my stuff is usually there, And so do you think that maybe some of the consumerized expectations of just like, it just works, has bled into the concepts of like storage should be cheap and, what did you say? Like highly scalable. You said 3. I just can't remember.
Big, strong, fast.
Yeah.
There wasn't cheap in there. Okay,
Yep.
big, strong, and fast.
No, but you know what? I'll tell you what's interesting. We have where we are a new enterprise model. It's open source, open platform, modular, and we make hardware. We're despite the fact we manufacture in North America, we're very, very efficient at building our hardware, and we're framed up competitively on the enterprise end of it. We have other ends of it, obviously. Maybe we'll talk about home labs after a bit. But on our enterprise end of it, we have the legacy vendors who have a very expensive business models, and an awful lot of that is that steak that they buy you at your local steakhouse, and all that stuff's baked into their cost structure. And it's part of what they have to do to stay in business. So we got them on one end, and the other side of what we have is cloud. And it's one of the really interesting things as I get it. I really want to hear your story on Packet and Equinix. But we look at cloud, and when you try to put that out and put it out at the market, you guys have cost structure that comes in underneath, and there's a whole layer you have to build on it. So when we look at that, our systems like a new enterprise storage system with warranty and support, so you're not doing it yourself. There's somebody you call if anything goes wrong. And we were at let me rattle off some numbers. We're just in the middle of a study we're going to publish where we went out and we said, what's it cost you to store 1 petabyte of data for 5 years? And we said, new enterprise, full warranty, absolutely everything, 5-year warranty, totally covered, so you're never paying another check for service nor hardware issues for 5 years. And then we looked at cloud, and we did the big guys in cloud, Amazon and Azure and Google. And so what we ranged from the cost that we got, and again, it's going to depend on how often you access your data, of course, in the cloud world. So they were from 750,000 to 3.5 million for 5 years to store your data. And then we're just over 100,000 for a new enterprise clustered storage system, high availability storage system that's on-prem. You got to add your own power and your own network connections, but anyway, so that cost difference. So we don't, and again, we can find people where cost is an issue, but we have so many people that between legacy and cloud, that they look at that when you get into big data, not small data, because cloud is infinitely more sensible if you have, 5 terabytes of data that you need to use in a distributed manner. But when you get up into petabytes, the cost advantage for a new enterprise it just becomes absolutely huge. So that's I think that's where we are, and this world's developed up legacy enterprise vendors and then cloud, and then trying to extend cloud into that monster data set thing. Then you start to feel price when you get into that really, really big data. So.
Well, I'm guessing we're going to scratch in on this thing called new enterprise, right? A little bit. I struggled over the past 10 years or so to define a very similar, what I think you're referring to, which is kind of a technology weaponizing company. Like technology is at the heart of what they do. It's not on accident. It's not some byproduct of what they do. And because of that, their usage is kind of like not normal. It's not bell curve. right? It's either really big, it's really fast, it's really important, it's really like connected. It's something to do with that, which is not just like, hey, I need to make sure my Exchange server gets backed up, right? And so one of the things that I believe that you're poking on is like both models that you talked about. We're going to call legacy model, which is really an OEM distribution model, which has a high expense, but does reach all corners of the market. Right? There's a sales rep for legacy storage company in like every town in America, probably, or at least somebody's assigned to cover it. And that's probably like cover the rest of the world. So it's about reaching this kind of large, kind of distribution capability with relatively, I mean, the product is almost like less relevant as is the distribution, right? Because you're kind of taking a kind of normalized or Bell product, mature thing, and making sure that you can sell it out to everybody. And I think cloud, on the other hand, is very similar, right? It's all about like things that work great for almost everybody. And when you think about the millions of customers of public cloud, right, like millions of customers who kind of all look the same or have bell curve style needs, but I think this new enterprise, or where I see most of the interesting innovation right now in our lives, or through the use cases that my kids and myself spend most of our times touching, it's like anti-bell curve. It's mobile networks, of which there are 10 or 20 in the whole world, that spend all the money. They don't look like anybody else. Or right now, obviously, AI companies, which are just not normal in terms of their usage of pretty much anything. Automotive companies, like you name it, it's like the anti-bell curve problem. Financial services, I guess we'll probably have a lot less, at least down here in America, a lot less small community banks here in the coming years, but we'll have a couple really big ones, right? And like that kind of like movement towards the anti-bell curve customer whose needs are, they might not be extreme, but they're definitely, not normal.
Atypical. Yeah.
And it seems like, is that what you guys mean when you say new enterprise? Because I don't, help me understand what that, if we're on the same plane.
We are. It's a great question, and it's a question that we are clarifying all the time as we watch our customer sets, as the old throw stuff on the wall, see where it sticks thing happens when you start up your company, right? And we've been at this for we got a decade and a bit of doing this, and we see a bunch of different areas where this whole open source, open platform, modular thing works. Key to it is service, right? And it's one of the things that go why isn't there? Well, you got to figure out how to scale out service, and that's
100%.
And that's one of these things that you're going to use an AI chat bot to do your service. And this stuff you're not going to do it, so you got to scale that out. So it's one of the things we've learned how to do. And then, so where does it go? And we are really at the, the big multi-million-dollar, tens of petabyte clusters. It's settling in really, really well in that world. And the, and they're, and what's a little bit hard about it is they don't have a sign that says, hey, I'm a multi-10 petabyte cluster that you can knock on their door.
Turns out that's not a segment or category that the Department of Labor is tracking.
Yes, absolutely. The other end of it will go down to things like small video producers. The video world, which is democratized, and we have all these, one-man contractor, hire 2 or 3 in there. We have a potent value proposition for these guys. It's game-changing what the technology level can do by bringing, and going from sort of consumer NAS technology or external hard drives. All of a sudden, they take something like our, even our HL15, our shrunk down enterprise
little
ancestor,
baby 45 drive,
little baby thing, and all of a sudden you can like edit direct from network, and your workflow changes dramatically in there. So we're just in our organization right now, we're developing these customer groups. We've learned more and more how to get at them, and it's been absolutely fascinating. There's a whole middle road, like that bell curve world of and you get into whatever they just slice and dice down into segments. Small and medium business as a segment. And you look at that, and I don't know how we go after that, because we don't have a value proposition. We have customers there, and the value proposition is huge, and it's actually profitable for us to serve. But the challenge really is How do you scale out? Yep, it's distribution, as you said. How do you scale that out?
Yeah.
And as you do that, and you scale it out. How much can you scale it out? Because again, it's open source, it's open platform. You can pull this off in other ways, but if you pull it off without service, that's the reason it hasn't gone. It's only gone very limited places on its own, because you need the service to pull it together.
Yep.
And
this is why people love cloud and why they're paying so much more.
Cloud's
Who's
about
running it for them?
Yeah.
And just going back to the concept of new enterprise and what new enterprise kind of means to me when I think about it, when you think about what the customer wants and what they need in their solution, not putting up any roadblocks, right? Of, it's a proprietary system, so you have to use it like this or this,
We are
right?
in control
Yeah,
as the
letting
vendor.
them
No.
do what they want with their solution, and then being there to enable them and support them, right? No, you don't have to buy the drives from us if you don't want to. If you have a place to, you know what I mean? No, you don't. You can, if you need this software, we can help you. We can
modular
work
in
with
our
you.
service
Very
offerings.
modular, exactly. So that's one of the core things that I really is one of the values that I love about the new enterprise model, is just being there and being able to solve the problem for the customer, whatever that may be, and not putting up those roadblocks.
Yeah, I'll jump on that
So-
just to add. It's not so much the new enterprise, like who is the new biggest customer. That's part of it. We always want to go after that. But it's like the legacy vendors have decided their business model serves them, and therefore everyone else has to deal with that. We take the good parts of enterprise, the serviceability, the rock solid performance, the rock solid
Support.
stability, all the good parts, and then we fix the rest of it. And that's the new enterprise, where we're just like, we are going to come in and offer.
Brett,
you-
I'll add on.
Yeah.
I'll offer you something, Brett, there, because I think, enterprise means a lot to a lot of people, right? It's meant mature, it means big, it means whatever. But I think what you're getting at more, and I think what we've been thinking a lot about too, we tended to start businesses that are in the infrastructure space, and so those are naturally long cycles. They don't just refresh. So even the concept of legacy, or forward-looking, Kubernetes is going to get pretty legacy here pretty soon. And that can give us all kinds of things on that, right? It's just maybe a little bit like something we noticed, especially while we were at Equinix with 10,000 customers, and that was our first time, at least my first time in a big company. Mostly businesses, enterprises, where technology was somewhat key to, if not their entire business, a part of their business. They were trying to become a service provider to themselves, to some external, and so they need operator kind of level, stuff, but they don't happen to be at the scale of, the hyperscale, the big companies who are, obviously able to define and run, things in a very specific way. So they need an ecosystem of vendors to do that for them, right? They need help. But it doesn't mean that they're key to profitability or performance or differentiation in the market isn't confined to what you can buy off the shelf. Like they actually might need to go and build and operate something that's specific to their requirements. And this, to me, is more like the new service provider, or the service provider within the enterprise that exists everywhere. When you find those, they care a lot more. And first of all, they don't want to do it all, but they want to do the parts that are differentiating to that. Yeah. And that's a little bit different than thinking about the enterprise. We've talked in our little incubation the last year or so around what's the Fortune 1000 of 2035.
Right.
And that's a far enough time frame that you can start to think about the capability set. Obviously, there's a lot of needs in the rest of the market and in other parts of the business. The question is, what are you going to go be the best in the world at? What are you going to really find your mojo with and service really well?
Yep. No, very well said.
Yeah, and you know what? Best in the world at? We look at that, and we look at our own passion in here. What really drives us in that, it's a conversation that's gone on a lot in the last little while, as we kind of look at all the directions that have opened up in front of us. And we have one thing that comes back, it's customer experience, and in the context of technology and storage technology. And when we do that, we end up in we end up where we are, right? And it's the ability to craft under our model very, very versatile solutions, but to be able to roll those solutions out, to be able to do that very fast and very cost effectively. And at the end of the day, big, strong, fast solutions, but it's that service level, that customer experience level It's for an organization to come in and say, hey, we need storage, clustering. Our business is just massively moving towards clustering. And we have a section of what we call Cluster for Everyone. And so you go down to we're very effectively covering municipalities, and which is a place that they struggle in budget. They can't buy legacy enterprise. Cloud drains their budget, once they got their police department and their body cams and everything else. And so they end up buying sort of mid-level servers, and then they develop an affliction we call server zoo, and where you just get a whole bunch of different servers at different ages, and every one of them is mission critical to somebody inside the organization. And then we come along with clustering, and we can get clustering in that's way within their budget. In fact, it's not much different from buying more single servers and continuing their addiction. and then when they do that, it's this long-term cure for them. They, the software defined, it's total scale out,
Yep.
Software defined, your simplicity, your high availability now, which is really, really cool for an organization like that. And when you go to expand, we're out of, getting shy in storage. Good. You got some empty hard drive slots, plug new hard drives in. That's all there is to it. To hard drive slots, plug another server in, and everything only gets stronger. And and they're not running around and having to say, hey, when you're looking for the files for the police department, go look on this server, not that server, changing shares, running around their whole department. So yeah, it's pretty cool that customer service thing, that rolling our technology together to deliver things that are just game changing for the segments we're in is
Absolutely.
That's
I mean, putting the smarts in the software around clustering and scale out is huge, and making that accessible to more people. I know Matt has a story related to this, and even really, really capable organizations, struggle with TCO when it comes to that, and they've got mismatched resources. Matt, you should give the tale of some big giant company that you worked with that struggled to put more drives into their servers, or that ended up being the answer.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, Zach, but when we first met, I pitched him an idea of using for our internal platform a different configuration of server that we had at the time, and it was one that was stocked full of more drives. And I remember him being like, "What do you need all this NVMe storage for?" And I was like, "Well, I need it for Ceph." And it was like kind of funny because I forget the board that we were using at the time, but there was a bug in the firmware where we couldn't have more than 2 NVMe's in the Dell, because it had 8 bays and we couldn't stuff more drives into it. It was really frustrating. But
some kind of bifurcation bug or something.
Yeah, it had something to do with the NVMe driver or whatever, because you could put other disks inside of there and it was fine. But the story that he's talking about is when we were kind of doing some Black Friday prep at SendGrid, and if you know anything about SendGrid's business, on Black Friday they send a lot of emails. The last time I was there was around 8 billion in a 24-hour period of time, which if you map that out is a lot of transactions. We actually used Ceph for storing and managing sort of all the ingest for the email processing, deduplication, these types of things.
Yep.
And we were looking at spending, I think, roughly around $24 million on a new Dell lease to get more nodes in. And after we went and sort of surveyed the lay of the land in terms of what hosts we had out there, we actually just realized we were storage bound in almost all of these hosts. Mm-hmm. And by using clustering, by using Ceph, and by adding more disks inside of the nodes, we actually negated like a $24 million compute spend, because we actually had the capacity we needed already. We were just not sort of allocating enough storage per CPU. I mean, we were trying to do vanilla VM models, and we also we were just using, like KVM, QEMU, using mostly open source technologies to get everything scheduled, landed on the hosts, which meant that we would statically allocate compute resources and account for overhead and these types of things. But the story was mostly around how, when we were looking at bin packing, we just realized that we, hadn't stocked them full of enough drives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting.
And I think the interesting thing there is very few companies have the ability to be like, oh, well, we'll just go stuff in drives into hundreds of servers and rebalance all of our workload and it'll be magically great, right?
Yep.
Vast majority of organizations don't have that.
Yeah.
Getting the info, having the clustering foundations, having the software capability to actually make that a reality. Like these are real barriers for a lot of people, especially when they're scared of their file system or of other things, right? Restriping, et cetera. So I know maybe moving some workload around, is somewhat more common right now, but moving data around, this is, you gotta be careful what you're doing.
And that's why Ceph is just so powerful. It's just completely transparent to the user. You add additional placement groups, you add additional OSDs in, it's just going to do it all for you. Sometimes if it's a large data ingest, maybe you'll do a little bit of babysitting, but for the most part, it's just completely seamless, which is...
You can also set the level of availability, because when we were at Equinix, we also were operating a lot of like edge locations without as much compute on hand as we would normally have, let's say in some of our primary locations. Like in New York, we didn't have a problem with getting, resources, but in like in some remote Boston data center that Zach had stood up a while before then, we only had, I think, 1 or 2 nodes, and we actually were in our default configuration with Ceph. We didn't have quorum because we told it that we needed a minimum of 3. We had to do this many writes before we would accept a transaction. And because you can configure it to sort of be like, no, it's okay. Like, you don't need to write this many times. We could run the same software in instances where we had less compute, even once we had more, right? So it's like some of the flexibility of the software layer also just totally negates the need to have like Snowflake solutions all over the place, right?
Yep.
Could we go right now, and I will just pause it a little bit. I would love to go back. Would you guys just tell us a story of how Packet started, and just take us through your evolution and how you guys got there at Equinix, and all about you guys, because we dove into 45,
sure.
but I'd really love to
hear.
Hey
man, you're driving, as it were.
We just a good conversation to let it flow.
Yeah.
But, do you want to?
I would love to hear that as well.
Why don't you ask a question?
Yeah. So
go ahead,
Jacob. You've been so quiet, and you have such a cool desk. Why don't you tell us? How did it all begin?
It is so nice. All right, so we referenced at the top of the hour that Zach and I had started off our entrepreneurial career as itinerant lawnmowers in suburban California, and gone off and done musical adventures. Zach had ended up early in a Linux hosting company. You can call it cloud now. It was called hosting then. It was very sexy. Sold out of that business in 2011. And around 2014, my marketing business was 35 people. I was like, I don't want to make it 70 people. That feels like a lot of time for money. We should start a business together. We're in our mid-30s. Why don't we figure something out together? It'd be great to replicate our early success, when our parents paid for all the CapEx and we had no living expenses. That was the best business we ever had. So we started searching for a new business in around 2013 and spent a year trying to find a business that was not digital infrastructure, because Zach was like, anything but digital infrastructure. Those clouds are getting pretty big out there. Watch out, they might be coming. Like
24 hours, pager duty, never a day of rest, all those kinds of things.
I don't know, all that stuff too. But it's like, I know it's alluring, but no, it just got out of that business. Like I don't want to go back in right now. And so we had these crazy ideas, and we were going to do blockchain business backed by gold. I mean, this is before blockchain was.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of ideas, but it ended up that we were at a holiday party we were hosting, and down in the basement was a bunch of network nerds, all going like, how it should be, how it really, you guys might have heard this conversation around the lunch table, like right before you got on this podcast, probably. It was like, an opinion about like, hey, this is all great out here in the cloud. It's awesome, but what if you wanted to do some like, I don't know, layer 3? What if you wanted to run your own BGP? You'd have to roll it all yourself. And so the idea for Packet came around, and similar to the way you guys are talking about, democratizing some advantage that was, not okay, I want the benefits of like cloud, but I'd like to have the benefits of my own infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of an IT world versus a software world. So innovation, I'm not sure, but like turning servers on and off programmatically, we could do it. And we built a system, so we could do it hundreds of thousands of times per month. We then rebuilt it with Matt to do it even better, because it was pretty, the first couple times through, you always have to kind of learn along the way.
Did you guys build it on it? Sorry. I was just going to wonder, did you guys build it on anything existing, or did you build it from scratch? Like, did you have an automation tool?
Why don't you tell that story?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was super committed to the open source world. In fact, I remember partnering with Ink Tank
Wow.
back with that was
yeah.
still spinning out from DreamHost
Yep.
on Ceph back in like what is it 2006 7.
Yep.
Early supporter of OpenStack with the Rackspace team and the foundation. And so I thought, by 2014 we should absolutely lean in to open source orchestration for cloud computing. That's what we should do, and we want to contribute to the community and really support what was a flailing/failed project called Ironic, which was the bare metal kind of provisioning aspect of OpenStack. And we're like, why would we want to go create new software around this? We should just take this existing community and contribute. That was an awful idea, it turned out. And so, we spent about 6 months, most of our initial seed capital, basically trying to wield thousands of lines of Python with like so much vendor junk built into that, just to do basic things like DHCP a node, manage some Pixie responses, and get an in-memory operating system to blow stuff onto a disk, right? And we're like, wait. So after about 6 months, we finally gave up running ourselves into this, giant concrete wall, and we just built, Docker was just coming out, I think it was still .cloud, the early, kind of container stuff, and we said, why don't we just build a couple services to do the exact things that we want?
Yep.
Turn on and off the server, give out DHCP leases, like Pixie boot a machine, like manage the life cycling of blowing bits onto a disk, manage the life cycling of trying to reset everything back to where we got it, right? Et cetera. So we took a series of that, and we actually just built all of that independently, which turned out, I think, was the right choice, because we wanted to do something that didn't require, frankly, we didn't have the resources, even though we were pretty community minded, we didn't have the resources to change what was a relatively vendor driven community around OpenStack. We just couldn't show up to enough meetings to argue our points about why all this bloat to support every single piece of hardware ever before you could reliably support one piece of hardware was the right idea. So yeah, that's where we ended up building most of that software ourselves.
So
later trying to open source it, the problem is that what we found is that most people didn't care, right, about this layer. It's very, very niche, and that's what we built around from a branding perspective, which maybe we stumbled onto the new enterprise first. Like we didn't mean to get there. I think one of our first users on our public cloud was Mitchell from HashiCorp, like wondering if he could make Terraform work in a data center, and then like a couple days later, here comes like solid Docker, like it was true. Nerds. Yeah, I think it was ESXi, right? And so, I think that we stumbled on to that kind of niche user, and we always knew that it would be pretty opinionated. But when we tried to open source more of our tool sets later, we just couldn't find the community who could actually use these kind of sharp tools without hurting themselves. And we didn't have enough of a business in packaging that software and making it consumable by a wider base. So it was almost like running around with scissors. And people could hurt themselves in the data center. So in the end, people wanted a service.
The ones who could,
more,
right? Like the guys
like
at
a bare metal
AWS
cloud or
picking up a lot of that stuff because they could, So just to fast the story, so we built a business. It was venture backed. We ended up, leading our first funding round through a strategic investment from SoftBank with Dell Capital and Samsung and other, sort of like logical, hardware-y, close to the business infrastructure people. We scaled that up, it was a growing business, but we were always aware that we had like only one out of, like we knew software and developers, and we were an appropriate bridge to that community, but we didn't have global set of data centers to scale cost effectively, and we didn't have like unlimited capital to shovel into it and make, bespoke hardware. As hard as we were trying, that was a really missing legs of the stool. And so in 2019, we started talking with Equinix and other people as well who were like really scratching on the itch of, hey, we have customers who care about their infrastructure, but they're struggling to do it, right? How do we help them do more? Yeah, and how do we help them make their particular advantage more operational? And so Equinix acquired Packet in March 2020, like March 2nd, like the next week, everyone shut down. We didn't see each other for a couple months. So it was an interesting time. And then we scaled that business there, really as like kind of like data center as a service. I mean, yes, bare metal servers, but that's the least interesting part. It's it's obviously the operations part, the network part, the put it in the right place part, the sustainability part, the protect me from, power price increases in Europe when the Ukraine war starts part, like complicated stuff that people need, but often aren't super advanced in their own staff. They don't have time. They don't have people working on firmware, or power price negotiations.
So that's really cool. Can you tell me, let's wind me back to the start, the entrepreneurial genetics in me says, see, first start and your early technical beginnings, who are the customers and what sort of segmentation, what sort of scale out in terms of being able to gather enough customers to be able to get to your next level? Who was your first customers and
To survive.
Yeah, well, that's the first part.
Yeah, before you sold, to get to.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's really helpful to be lucky. And I think we are lucky on timing. I mean, we weren't completely unaware of it. One of the reasons that got us interested, I was actually sitting at this desk with Alex Pulvey, who had started CoreOS in 2013. I'd known him from Rackspace when he was working on, I think, some storage stuff or whatnot. Yeah, and so libcloud. But anyways, we were interested in cloud native. What became cloud native? And my neighbor, gentleman Dan Kahn, who had started the CNCF, really inspired me around this. He's like, software is going to be the runtime is going to be portable. And I'm like, well, shoot, if the runtime's portable, that means developers could run it on anything. Yep. They could run it anywhere. Crazy. It turns out, if we could make an API to hardware, well, shoot. And so we really got lucky, I would say, with two things. One was just the huge adoption of cloud native movement, right? Where people were anxious to try, they had unmet needs around running infrastructure heavy businesses, like what Matt was doing at Twilio, that just needed, hey, I need an automated hardware provider and don't get in my way. Mm-hmm. Can I have that? And I don't need anything else because I'm going to do the rest in my own portable layer of orchestration. And so we kind of got lucky with that, which really brought us a lot of, I'm going to call service provider style customers. They were anxious to do business and control more of the stack because they needed it for economics or performance reasons or whatever. And then they also just needed to be in lots of locations, which frankly was too hard to do themselves. Mm-hmm. It was too hard to be in 8 or 10 or 20 locations around the world to run this infrastructure. Nobody had the teams. So we got lucky with that. And then the other one was we targeted some large scale anti-bell curve customers. Mm-hmm. So Sprint was a big customer of ours running their kind of software based 4G and 5G network. So we got lucky with some just true thought leadership on large scale providers and customers. We were running the Link NYC network for a while, which was the public Wi-Fi. They just needed weird servers run their way. And so we had a couple of really important customers that dragged us through that. And then frankly, $45 million of venture money.
Very cool.
Didn't hurt. Yeah. Yeah. So if you can't sell customers, you got to sell investors. Yeah. You'll always be selling. Are we selling stock or are we selling, our actual product? And that really did help us.
Yeah. What's interesting is contrasting to 45Drives. Whether two businesses away from here, quite very, very, very different materials, technology, construction industry. We did some dancing with venture and we had some investors in it. That didn't work out well. We managed to separate after some challenges. And Protocase and 45Drives are all bootstrapped, and we've never gone there. And we just look for customers, and right out of the gate. Not that everybody doesn't look at them, but we say that's all there is. We got enough money of our own to just get something and just start selling it. So that really raw, follow the trails you can follow, which has some real advantages to it, but it's got some disadvantages too, because you end up in places that aren't necessarily the best place when you want to get to the next level on it. You end up where you have to by necessity. But we've grown through that now, and we're in this really wonderful spot where. And the other reflection I look on that, I think of the layer you talk about that. And it's the word cloud around it, but it's infrastructure. And as we are purely storage infrastructure.
Exactly.
And when we started,
we always called it layer 0, Doug. We called it layer 0.
I like it.
Because we were like, an OSI stack has like a bunch of layers, go 1 through 7.
Yes.
What is 0?
Yeah.
And so,
and we used to we used to it used to be hardware, and we really did make the cheapest. It was the cheapest, per hard drive slot server you could get when we started. And everybody says it's a rotten place to be, but it wasn't a bad place to be. We opened up, we learned about it, and then we
iterated.
More and more people tried to adopt this, and then one of our sales guys came in to me one day and said. He says, we don't have service. He says, this is hobbling me. We got a higher class of customer wants to come, but we don't have service. And somebody says, oh, we do, but it's for free. And he said, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
What do you mean? I'm
sell
helping
free.
everyone. Yeah.
It's really good. We love giving it for free.
Yeah.
So you made it so successful that you could send Matt Anderson a free HomeLab? This is like true definition of.
Tell us about that. I'm kind of surprised. It's been an hour and we haven't talked about the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we earn our living. It's enterprise, and and in there we have our proud geeks. I'm a geek. I don't get to spend as much time. I'm an old geek now, and as younger, I used to mess around with building all kinds of stuff, and but we got young geeks like Mitch over here, and a bunch of other people in here, and we had, because we're into the open side of things, we're very, very open about what we do. So we did a lot of YouTube, a lot of sharing of technology, which became YouTube marketing for us.
Grew some big fan base there.
And so we get this fan base, and it's really fascinating. It was very, very effective, but of people to watch.
I mean, the microphone, the neon, it does kind of have a social media vibe.
Intentionally. We grew, that's part of what we grew in this, and this communication with the community, and we earned their respect. And you have to earn their respect. I mean, they're ruthless.
Yep.
You mess around with their values, they are so ruthless.
They'll flame in the comments.
Oh yeah.
Oh, in a heartbeat. But we respect. I mean, we're part of it. We get it, and so we played well with that world. That was a lot of our conduit into the enterprise. Server rooms. The technical people who tend to choose our product in the past, changing now, but very much the technical people. So, and we've had so many people come in and said, "I'd love to buy one of your servers."
A little too much.
And then they go, yeah, but you know what? Oh, God, we did it. When we first really decided to move in this, we put a little communications piece, had 3 pictures. It had a 18-wheeler, and it had a little micro car with a
Mr.
mini
Bean
utility. Car. Yeah, Mr. Bean driving around his little car. And then a heavy-duty pickup truck. And we said, our people are telling us they want 45 enterprise server, big, strong, fast for their HomeLab. But then they tell us, it's...
My wife would kill me if I bought one.
The wife would kill me. and literally, I mean, between the budget...
the electric service for this,
electric service, sound. And it's like, so we did the analogy. We said it's an 18-wheeler. You may love machinery. You love a big turbo diesel, chrome stacks, and 40 tons of hauling capacity. But if you bring it home, put it in your driveway, the wife's really going to get mad at you. But you don't want to drive around that micro car, which we said is, the home storage, the NAS, the cheap can NAS things, which I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that they're adequate. They do what they say, plug them in the network and they store. We said, this is for people, the HomeLabs world's the ham radio operator of today, right?
It's the playground of the technical professional, right? Like, everyone wants to go to work and screw with everything, but like you're not allowed.
You can't really.
when you're running massive data centers, but you can go home to your home lab and break it all you want. And that's where the fun really happens.
So we built that thing and that machine. Look, we committed. We're going in this market. It's not a huge market. It's technically elite people. So we're selling them servers that, for most home networks. I mean, if you're on a gigabit at home, your Synology box is good. It's really good. So you buy one of our servers, the HL15 that we just came out with, and we just did Mitch and I did a video and recently, and said, let's just plug one of these things in. Let's put it into a 10 gigabit box. It comes with 2 10 gigabit connections in it, and good. You saturate that just like straight out of the box.
Easy, yeah.
And and then we showed video editing. So video editing, if you're on, say, an internal SATA SSD. When you direct off one of these boxes, you're 2.5 times the speed of that. And the experience is actually equivalent to editing off an NVMe internal NVMe
As far as
drive.
field goes, yeah, absolutely.
And with video. And so you get this thing that, okay, it's big, strong, it's fast, it's fun for the right person, but yeah, it's overkill. We're selling a McLaren or something like that into the, if you wanted to go in cars, driving cars, not carrying vehicles. And
they're selling nice electric trucks with McLaren shocks in them now. It's all good. You can have.
So that's what that thing is, and put it out in the market. And it's and the home labs world is, I don't know if you guys have followed any of the, the social that comes on. Everything comes out. There's always somebody who says, "Well, I can do that."
They're also very ruthless.
Absolutely ruthless. Well, I don't know why you do that, because I can build.
It's called a tear down for a reason. I mean, it's not just.
It's
not a love fest.
So we put that in there, this thing that's big and powerful, and you can either buy the chassis with the direct wired architecture in it and build your own if you want, or you can get it fully wired. And it's been fun, and we launched the thing with the expectation that if we sold 250 of them in the first year, like, we can make small volume stuff because of the way we manufacture. We said if we sold 250 in the first year, good. We're looking after our friends doing this.
Our fans,
and we soared way over that in the first pre-release, just taking $100 deposits on it. So it's been good.
Yeah.
And we just started when we building a community around and getting people to do things with it and share what they do.
Yeah, I actually have a performance challenge that's up on our forum right now. And Matt, I don't know if you've, I know you have one there. If you've hopped on the forum, we've got a performance challenge going essentially to see if anyone can beat my performance numbers. We did SMB multi-channel. I think it's 1.7 gigabytes a second over Samba or something like that. I left lots of room there, so I hope some people will be able to beat me. We got some swag that is up for grabs for anyone that wins. But Matt, tell us, have you had some time to play with the server, and kind of what are your takeaways so far, if so?
Well, what's kind of ironic about it is you don't ship it with any drives.
Yeah. Oh, we forgot about that for you. Sorry.
Yeah. So even though there's I was counting the bays, and I was like, but there's no. I was like, are they somewhere else in the box? And it's. When I popped it open, I obviously, having worked quite a bit with super micro machines at Equinix, I wasn't actually expecting to see the M2 NVMe that was in there, because normally you had to have an add-on card for those in the previous super micro boards. Mm-hmm. And I was like, where is there not even a boot drive in this thing? I was like, it said that it came shipped with an operating system on it, but I was like, where would it go? And then I noticed the M2 chip in there, which was like a pleasant surprise. But I'm actually have a bunch of drives in my cart to go buy,
nice.
Because I didn't have any that fit into the bays that were there. Because the backplane model is actually really cool. I mean, I love the idea, especially the way that you guys have it rigged up for cooling on both the front and back fans. Mm-hmm. I just didn't actually have any drives that would fit into the damn thing. So in terms of the performance challenge, I'm going to be working with that 1 terabyte onboard, or going to need to wait until I get those shipped to me. So
sure, we're keeping it running for a while yet anyway, so you'll have a chance.
So yes, we built that thing. We basically took everything we have in enterprise,
Yep.
And it's all the little things. It's toolless. Server room people don't like putting in 4 screws per caddy and putting in 60 drives in one of our 60s. And so, I mean, it's got everything from that, anti-vibration, very good engineering on the power and power distribution, and very good engineering on the cooling. So we put all that stuff together. And the market said make it quiet, because the wife complains if I got one of those little jet engines to cool a lot of the enterprise servers.
Well, I think you guys, I mean, look, this is like geekery 101, but for people who've never been in a data center, or, grew up in the cloud and, infrastructure as software, there's something exciting about bringing hardware into the world, because it is an innovation layer that you can actually fiddle with, and without feeling familiar enough, where even the language, I know as a marketing guy, I came into a data center company and I was like, can you speak slowly? Because I got to look up every word you're saying, and everyone's tossing around like, yeah, the DIMM with the blah, 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 and the backplane. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Which a lot of people, that's a real barrier. And so I like I was attracted to your home lab. I tried to get Zach to spend more venture money, which he wouldn't do on a home lab. I think for market expansion opportunities. How do you bring closer to the value when the value is like they're working hard to get away from it? In most of the worlds, like now people are like, I'd like to build another data center at work. How about anyone on board with that? And everyone's like,
Well, Jacob and I used to have this because he was like, how did you get into it? I remember when you doing it. I was like, I just went over to Alex's place in NAC and got myself a quarter cabinet and a switch and started mucking around with my things. And now, like, you try and like get a quarter cabinet at a big data center company. They're like, excuse me, did you say a megawatt? Like, I'm sorry, what? Right? Like, and like you really, it's very inaccessible. And for most people who don't know, I mean, it's out of sight. They don't put signs on the building. You can't get into it. It's really hard to find. If you're not on the list, you're probably not going to call back from a salesperson. It's like tinkering with hardware. It's kind of hard, right?
Yeah.
Hence, Jacob, why like you want more people to be able to buy it. You have to get more people used to playing with it.
Well, Zachary,
Well, even if you buy it too,
just
like, even if you buy it, this was something where it's like I had to go pay $27 for my Super Micro out of band license too, because it was like, even if you buy the gear, you still got to go pay heed a little bit to get some of the features that you might want with it.
Oh, that's
too,
good.
right?
It's like heated seats in your Mercedes, right?
Updating the BIOS
Already
and stuff
there.
like
Turn
that.
them on.
Well,
Yeah,
and
most of it.
it's certainly a lot cheaper than Dell's iDRAC, though. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, you got to tell them the thing
yeah.
with
Well, look, your comment about
the data center.
centers and being just kind of hiding. We were actually in a Equinix data center about this time last year doing a big install for one of our bigger customers, and they had tighter security than the airport. We were in London.
Yeah, it's Slough.
Or Slough. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were just outside Slough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got through customs, whatever. You get to the data center, and they're like, no, where's your passport? Let's see.
I had to go back to the
We're
hotel.
gonna need to really pat you down before you come in here.
Yeah, it was crazy.
My favorite Equinix data center entrance story, and I've been in a lot of them. They used to give us cool like Xboxes, and we'd hang out there. Now it's
no
like,
way.
no, get out of here. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It used to be cool. It was like totally for people to like work on the internet and hang out. But my best one was going into a Tokyo Equinix, and after I do, and I bring the passport and all the things, and I get through. Then they make me take off my shoes. Right, because it's Japan. Right?
It's Japan, yeah, exactly.
You're entering our house. Like, please take off your shoes. I'm like, but I have a 100-pound server in my hands. Like, I do not want to take off my shoes. And they're like, no, you have to take off your shoes. And eventually, like, I ended up walking around this data center with me and a friend carrying this like giant 3U storage server, probably in slippers.
So they give you
It wasn't
slippers.
just a friend. I think it was an.
Oh yeah, we got slippers.
Save money on all that nice sticky stuff they put on the floor.
On the
to pull
floor,
debris
yeah.
off.
Yeah, slippers. And the rent-a-cop was like super insistent that I take off my shoes and put on slippers.
Well, democratizing that hardware, I think, is great. I think what you guys are doing by starting with like, you don't have to compromise. You get what did you say, fast, cheap, and great, all of them together. But this
Big, strong,
this idea,
fast.
big, strong, fast. That's the one I meant.
My hat.
This idea that infrastructure is just a commodity that's going to go away. It's obviously not. We look at things going around us, and they're getting unique software and unique hardware paired together creates unique experiences. And we need people who know how to do it. We need people to help figure out new problems and solve them. So I love what you guys are doing with the home labs. Even if it doesn't become a big business, it sounds like a great thing to enable your other big business. And Matt is very appreciative.
Yeah, look, we're in it for fun. We're going to stay in there. We got a bunch of new products coming out in it. Leads me into one more thing, and I'd love to throw this and see what you guys have to say about this. So, talk about storage speed. As I said, the that HL15, it overshoots the speed needs of anything that anybody reasonably does at home. But that can be fun. That's why that's there. So when we get to our enterprise machines, a box full of spinners running at parallel can you get more speed, more data transfer speed, read and write than anybody. Well, it's connectivity limited.
Yes.
On large file workloads for spinners. The minute you get into smaller file workloads, that changes. But we have our hybrid machines. So we put our hybrid machines in. What do you guys say?
A little bit of flash goes a
little bit
long
of
way.
flash goes a long way.
Especially with ZFS, you have the ability of all those helper VDevs
Totally.
and Ceph as well. We've got journaling, we've got SSD tiers, metadata, all kinds of ways
Yeah,
to
we're,
use a
we're,
little
we're
bit of
kind
flash.
of a kumbaya. Why can't everyone work together? Whether
Yeah.
it's hybrid, spinning storage, and flash
NVMe
storage,
servers.
or
I
on-prem and
remember
cloud. It's like
something
it's not
about
one
the
or the
Arc
other.
cache.
Let's use both.
Yeah,
Arc cache.
exactly.
So we can get to network limited speed. So we've just come out with a new machine, and actually just the last couple of weeks we have it finally working. So it's in the it's all flash machine, 32 drives, nice little push and pop mechanisms, front loading, and a regular great cooling, lots of compute, all the compute you can stuff on that board,
64 core AMD EPYC Milan.
which is the standard for the
Very,
thing,
very
and you can
fast,
go up
yeah.
from there if you. And it's tri-mode, so it's the first UBM tri-mode machine I think that's out there in the market that we know of, and the fact
That you can
that
easily
Broadcom-
buy.
that,
They exist apparently, but
Yeah.
it's hard
We
to
can't
find
see them. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't find any. So anyway, it's a really cool machine. So we built this thing, and not quite sure where it's going, but we pre-sold quite a number of them to enterprise customers, and it's really high end. It's like, those spooky government agencies, sophisticated corporate, and that end of it. So we look at that and we go, and again, hardware, and we don't mind building something, and we really don't know where it goes. But this thing, our performance on how many IOPS does it do?
Oh my lord! What
Remember
are we?
offhand?
What is it? You
we're I think
16.
like 8 million.
Is it 8 million?
64
8 million is what I'm
gigabytes. I
measuring.
think we had a
60
throughput and running
64
at 10 million.
gigabytes per second throughput.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
You guys had us at million.
Yeah.
We're just like
Yeah, 1 million,
like,
1 million IOPS.
Yeah.
8
So,
million.
so
IOPS.
at that, so it's fascinating, and we're playing with them inside here now, and they're just going off the first customers right now, and just stunning. But we're looking at that, and we're scratching our heads. You scratch your head and where it goes, and so there's one, and that area. So we look at that, and I go, yeah, what I'll do, so 64 gigabytes, it's what, 700 gigabits per second, so
That's
700
six-
gigabit lines.
That's about 600 gigabits.
Or sorry, 600. I'm going the wrong way in that. So we scratch our heads and we go, where do we go? Where do we go with that? And again, we're finding out because we're throwing it at the wall, and some really cool stuff's coming back. But in your world,
like in our world, it's always been like, in service providers and cloud, it just grows to meet the capacity that's available. Obviously, not right away, and not in a flat curve, but the world is using more technology, not less. I think the consideration that we try to think about now, and then I know that this crew is going to have to jump off because unfortunately something else aside from talking about hardware all day, which sounds like the best use of our afternoon, is what's the cost on the environment in addition to the cost on the performance or the economics. Is like there's an often unaccounted for cost there, and so I bet that calculation next time we talk is going to be more a part of your conversation than less, just like it is for all of us every day. All the businesses are driving towards outcomes there, and it's going to be a big technology investment that helps make that happen. So it could be, I don't know.
So Matt, what would you do with if you got that kind of power there from your point of view?
Run a Ceph cluster to start, probably, but and actually the part of what you guys have done pretty well in the box is I'm surprised that you can fit that many drives on a regular power supply, which being able to just plug that into an outlet at home is pretty valuable, because I've spent the last couple of years also focusing on reducing power draw, reducing the amount of heat output, the amount of you're actually especially heat in the form of air. But this is also where some of the portability of the machine is important, because if I wanted to hook it up to liquid cooling or some other things, it's also I could totally do that. Yep. Because of how expandable it actually is, right? But that's a lot of where I spend my time these days is not actually figuring out how I could tax the machine, but actually how I can turn it down.
Yep.
Because more often than not, businesses are wanting to reduce their footprint, carbon output, emissions, whatever it is, or at least be aware of it. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of where it's I made this joke a couple times about paying $27 for the out of band license, but you need that to do certain things on the machine, especially with respect to power fan regulation. Now, I mean, with Supermicro and with what's already on board, it's like you don't actually have to have that. There's fan temp regulations already built in, but if you wanted to do anything fancier than that, you usually have to be talking to the machine from the outside and also like collecting data about it, which you can sort of only do by having like a dedicated NIC on the BMC, right? Which some of those, I mean, a lot of the home spec machines don't actually have the dedicated network interface for the BMC, which is, you know, really like limited in your ability to interact with the machine itself. So,
so it's interesting, you know, when we look at the environmental side of it, the real metric on that is power consumption per unit of storage and per unit of data accessed.
Yep.
And when you put them together in big servers, yeah, you concentrate your energy usage, but you end up coming out quite well on in terms of your per unit of, you know, versus the option if you're getting to that scale, doing it in multiple machines.
A lot of people are concerned with embodying carbon as well, you know, especially in drives, which is, you know, it's one of those things where there's always a trade-off. I mean, some of it is about extending the useful life of the machine, which you can think about like ways that you could do that with memory or storage are much higher than what you can do with extending the useful life of, like, let's say, a processor, right?
You know, look, and I love the conversation that one of our things is that everything we build is all threaded fasteners, built to take apart, built to upgrade. And we put upgrade kits for our machines together before. And the embodied energy angle is, you know, it's always been economic that people have bought from us, but that as the world changes, that's more and more important. But that high density is that's the
I mean,
huge
just
advantage
the
of
ability to
high density.
upgrade and reuse your chassis and power supplies.
Exactly.
You
We've
know,
got some
by
in the
putting
field
in
for
bigger
10
drives.
10
That's
years.
great.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
awesome.
and the all steel chassis, it was the first thing I noticed. Is I was like, dude, this thing's actually really nice. Like the box is actually quite nice.
Awesome, guys.
Well,
Well, listen,
gentlemen,
guys, it has been such a pleasure doing this,
Amazing.
man. We're gonna have to like nerd more on the hardware at some point. We'll have to
Absolutely.
put some I figured that Matt up in the mountain, he lives in the middle of nowhere in the woods. In fact, both of these guys live in the middle of nowhere in the woods.
Where
but
are you,
Matt is
Matt?
more in the middle of nowhere than the woods.
Grand Lake, Colorado.
Oh, cool. Beautiful. Yeah.
And so, you know, maybe he just needs a big caching, you know, server for his whole community, you know,
There you
because he
go.
might solve streaming for
we're just
that
gonna have to
and
do
solve
this
all the
again.
problems.
Big Netflix cache. There we go.
Well, anyway, we
Well, that's, I mean, you joke about that, but that's actually one of the ways that you can reduce carbon footprint and emissions is like use locally stored data versus pulling it over the wire every single time, right?
Yep. I got a big Steam cache for my games, so anyway.
Anyway,
Thanks,
sounds
guys.
like we'd be great to do another episode. So love to have you on again. Thank you for joining us. And
That's what's spinning.
That's what's spinning this week.
Thanks, fellas.
Keep spinning.
guys.
Keep spinning. See
Thank
later.
you, guys.
See ya.
Yeah, really appreciate it.